Tyson Foods stock, ticker symbol TSN. This stock is nearly flat year to date, but it has gone up and down quite a lot and has been trading between the $80 and $100 range. On the 8th of August they are going to announce the quarterly results, where analysts expect a 1.96 EPS and 13.27 billion in revenue. So is Tyson Foods stock a buy right now? In this video I'm going to show you what Tyson Foods does, a view at the historical returns, the fundamental analysis, dividends, the major competitors, and in the last part I'm giving you my price target to see if they are a buy or not. And I think you definitely want to see that part, so make sure to watch until the end. And I'm also very excited to see what you guys think about Tyson Foods stocks, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments. My name is Thomas and this is Thomas Invest. I'm an investor looking for great stocks at great prices. So what does Tyson Foods do? Tyson Foods is the largest US producer of processed chicken and beef. It's also a large producer of processed pork and protein-based products under several brands. Tyson sells 81% of its products through various US channels, including retailers. When we check the latest quarterly report, we see that Tyson Foods had a few highlights. EPS of 2.28, up 75% from prior year over year, and operating income is up 61% year over year. Operating margin is at 8.8%, which we will compare to the 5-year average later in this video. Tyson also reduced total debt by 1 billion. When we check the revenue breakdown, we see that they have 5 segments: beef, pork, chicken, prepared foods, international and other. The first interesting thing to check is the average price change, since we know that inflation is a thing of course, but it seems to look very good in terms of prices. But what worries me is the fact that volume change is nearly flat with some segments, and in some cases even down year over year. So beef increased around 23% in price, but volume is nearly the same. Pork is decreasing almost 5% in volume, but since the average price is going up, it's still growing year over year. Overall, volume is down 1.5%, but the overall average price increased by 17.6%, which led to an increase in revenue. And when we check margins, we see that right now operating margin is at 8.8%, which is a big increase year over year. In 2021 it was at 6.4%, which is significantly lower than the current profit margin. When we check the outlook, we see that USDA indicated that protein production will be relatively flat compared to fiscal 2021 levels. So this means no growth in the demand part. This doesn't mean that Tyson can't grow, but it will be harder. A thing that I really like is that they expect to have an increasing margin in the coming periods, so I'm looking forward to the next results of course, if we see another increase in margins as we did see in the latest reports. The last thing that I want to highlight is that I really like to see that Tyson Foods is buying back shares year over year. And this is also a smart move in my opinion, because it seems that shares are quite cheap right now. So I really like this part. And definitely we will take a look at it in the shares outstanding later in this video. But first we are going to check the historical returns. I decided to include the S&P 500 as a benchmark, and also 3 competitors, which are Hormel Foods, Conagra and Pilgrim's Pride. On the 5-year chart we see some mixed results, where Tyson Foods returned a 55% including dividends, while the S&P 500 is at 82%. Hormel Foods is at 60% and Conagra Brands is at 14.8%. Pilgrim's Pride is at 29% return. So the S&P 500 did beat all the stocks in the past 5 years. On the 1-year chart it's quite the opposite. Tyson Foods returned a 25% while the S&P 500 is at minus 5%. And this is also because of the inflation of course, and all other things that are happening right now in the world. Hormel is at 7.4% return, Conagra at 5% return and PPC is at 40% return. So the S&P 500 did underperform all stocks on the 1-year chart. On the 6-month chart we see some mixed results, where Tyson Foods returned a minus 2.6%. The S&P 500 is also at a minus 6%, and Hormel returned 5.5%. Conagra is at minus 2% and PPC is at 14%. On the 1-month chart we see that the S&P 500 is by far the winner, where they returned 8% while all other companies are nearly flat. So does this mean that Tyson Foods stocks is a buy right now? Let's find out by checking the fundamentals of this stock. But first, if you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you a lot for watching this video. I also want to mention that I'm almost at 1000 subscribers, so help me achieving this huge milestone by giving me a subscribe. In return, you receive similar analysis to this one every week. Let's continue by diving into the fundamentals. Tyson Foods is a 31 billion market cap company with a PE ratio of only 7.8, which is quite low but also typical for the industry. There's not a lot of excitement around this business. In the last part of this video we are going to check 3 price targets that I created for Tyson Foods, so make sure to watch until the end. 12 trailing months revenue is at 51 billion. In this graph we see that revenue is going up quite nice and steady in the long run, with some years or quarters where things start to slowly decrease, but in the long run it's up. But please keep in mind that demand will be lower or nearly flat for the meat in the coming periods or maybe even years. So it's not really likely that revenue will increase in high amounts, but will increase because of price changes. Net income is at 4 billion, which gives us a profit margin of 7.9%. And this is below my 10% minimum. But in this case it isn't a big problem, since it's typical for the industry to have lower margins, so I don't mind being below the 10%. On top of that, the 5-year average is significantly lower with 5.9%, so they are doing a great job there. And it's expected that margins will increase even more, as we saw earlier in this video. Next up is return on assets, which is below the 10% minimum. And return on total capital, the most important number here, is also below the 10% minimum. So this is something that I really don't like about this company. The only thing that I do like is the fact that current ROIC is significantly higher than the 5-year average. The next thing that I want to discuss is the balance sheet of Tyson Foods. Right now, total cash is at 1.15 billion and operating cash flow is at 3.7 billion. Leverage free cash flow is at 3.13 billion. You want them to have enough cash to pay down a big chunk of the total debt. I prefer companies who can pay down at least 50% of their total debt. Right now, Tyson Foods has 8.3 billion in debt, and to me this doesn't look that good, since they can't pay down at least 50% of the total debt. But keep in mind that they are paying down debt big time, as I told earlier in this video. So even when this doesn't look that good, I feel comfortable by knowing that they are paying down a lot of debt. And it's very important that free cash flow is growing, of course, since this is used to pay down debt, but also to buy back shares, pay dividends, do acquisitions and research and development. In this graph we see that free cash flow is up, but it's not really consistent, so it's a good thing that it's up, but I do prefer companies with a bit more consistent pattern here. So keep an eye on this number from time to time. Next thing are the shares outstanding. You want them to buy back cheap shares, so your piece of the pie becomes bigger. And in this graph we see that since over the longer period of time shares outstanding are going down big time, which is a good thing of course. But in the past 5 years the average is at only 1%, so that's not a lot. But at least it's going down, so that's the good part. This will also make it easier to maintain and increase the dividends of course. When we check the dividends we see a 2% dividend yield and a $1.84 annual payout, or 40 cents each quarter, which is pretty decent. Payout ratio is at only 18%, which is very low, and also very nice since they have left 82% in cash to pay down debt and also to buy back shares for instance. The 5-year growth rate is at 17%, which is very nice. So I really like this dividend scorecard. On top of that, they increased the dividends for 10 years in a row. So from a dividends perspective, it's looking really good. Next up are the fundamentals of Tyson Foods compared to the major competitors. I decided to include Hormel Foods, Conagra Brands and Pilgrim's Pride. Right off the bat, we see that Tyson Foods is by far the biggest company in terms of market cap and employees. All companies are trading for a low PE ratio except for Hormel Foods, which is quite interesting. Tyson Foods does have one of the lowest 5-year revenue compound annual growth rate, and PPC does have the highest. Net income compound annual growth rate is the highest at both Tyson Foods and PPC. And it's the same story with the free cash flow. Tyson Foods has the highest net income margin, which is very nice, and also the highest free cash flow margin. PPC has the highest return on equity, return on assets, return on invested capital. Tyson Foods is at the second spot. All companies seem to have a lot of debt compared to the free cash flow, so that's something to keep in mind. And the last thing that I want to check are the dividends. Right now, Tyson Foods has the lowest dividend yield, but the thing that I like here is the fact that the payout ratio is also the lowest at Tyson Foods, and the 5-year compound annual growth rate is the highest. So I think I will choose Tyson Foods all day in terms of dividends. And now the last part of this video. where I will give you my 3 price targets based on a low, mid and high assumption. I'm using the Everything Money software, which is one of the best tools out there. Definitely check them out. To get these 3 price targets, we need to fill in a few key numbers based on what we analyzed. Starting off with the revenue. We saw that it's expected for the revenue to slow down a bit. So I'm filling in 1% for the low assumption, 3% for the mid assumption, and 5% for the high assumption. I expect that profit margin will be at least the same, and for the high assumption I expect profit margin to increase a bit more, since this is what we saw earlier in the investor presentation. So I'm aiming for 5.5, 7 and 8.5%. For the free cash flow margin I'm filling in 4, 4.5 and 5%. And with the PE ratio I'm aiming for 9, 10 and 11. Since it's a slow growing company within an industry that isn't that excited, you won't find a lot of growth potential in this industry. For the price to free cash flow I'm filling in 12.5, 13 and 13.5. And for my annual return I'm filling in 12.5%, since I can get an easy 10% return with owning an ETF in the long run. Right now Tyson Foods is at $88. I hit analyze and we see some green numbers here. Low price targets of $56 to $68 and a mid price target of $74 to $103 and a high price target of $96 all the way up to $150. To be honest, I think they are in the range of a mid price target, which means they could be a buy if you believe these numbers. Because I think there is still some growth within this company and free cash flow is growing as well. They are buying back shares and paying down a lot of debt. My final conclusion on Tyson Foods stock is that I really like the defensive part of this company. They are a slow growing company within a somewhat boring industry. PE ratio is really low, dividends are nice and steady. So you got that part covered. On the other hand, I don't see a lot of excitement within the industry, and we also see that some segments are decreasing in volume. Even while they are undervalued, I'm not buying this company right now, since I think there are better deals out there. But remember to always do your own research and never fully trust on what I or other YouTubers say about a stock. I'm not a financial advisor and this content is just for entertaining purposes only. I hope you liked this video and I did bring some insights of the company to you. I would really appreciate a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to get notified when I'm posting a new video. Thanks for watching and I will see you in my next video.